that's where we're starting from. The leadership of the 10th National Assembly. For now, horse trading and political positioning is going on. Who's going to carry what? Who's going to lead where? Who's going to bail the cat? That's a question that a lot of people are asking. Some have said this region, that region, this faith, that faith. Someone says it really doesn't count which region or which faith. The most important thing is who will be the 20th President of the Senate, as in the Senate, and who's going to be the 20th Speaker of the House of Representatives, if we want to go by the numbers. So let's get into this conversation. And here with us in the Abuja studio is Dr. Ajibola Basiru, who's the senator representing Osun Central Senatorial District. He's of the APC, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, good morning.
He also happens to be a lawyer and the current spokesperson of the Senate. Again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Also joining us from our studio in Borno, virtually, is Mohammed Abaji, Senator of Borno Central Senatorial District. He's yet to come into that space. We'll bring him in as soon as he does. But Dr. Basiru, so 19 Senate presidents have gone from 1960, Nnamdi Azikiwe, and currently Ahmed Ibrahim Lawan, Senate President of the Senate, rather. In all of this, what do you think, in your opinion, determined who became president all of this? Because, if I do remember correctly, I think there are those who argue that Nwafo Rizu, 1963 to 1966, was the only person that came into that position by the constitutional procedure and in some asset. I said some asset. But let's get it. What do you think? Who should be, or how can that come out?
As far as I'm concerned, the leadership of the National Assembly, like any other political position, is political. And political consideration will ultimately trump any other argument that anybody canvass as to who will ultimately may be there. And you'll also discover that historically, even when political parties have preference for certain candidates, political ostrating, political maneuvering will ensure that even their political party will not have, the day. You will discover, when there's this issue about the Mejiba Kole, Patricia Isse, and also and so forth. So you see opposition party gang up against the ruling party, and they're able to produce, even though member of opposition of the ruling party, but those with a preference for the ruling party. You also will see the emergence of Senator Bukola Saraki at the Senate, and of course it's Senate, and of course the fierce contest between Senator Ali Ndume and Ahmed Lawal at the 9th Senate. So ultimately, whatever argument people canvass, I've listened to just before the start program, my brother from Osun, Wole Oke, talking about competence, capacity, about benefit of the people. Those are just eye-sounding words that politicians use. And the Fredo Pareto, a philosopher, said that when it comes to ideology, people will have come to conclusion you only be using for argument theologically to justify your position. The question you ask yourself is this: will somebody be a member of the National Assembly and will not be competent to be a presiding officer at the National Assembly? The position of a presiding officer is that of primus inter pares, first among equals. Let me
bring it. You talked about, would he be a member of the National Assembly and not be competent to be a presiding officer?
Yes.
The longest serving Senate president was Senator David Mark.
Yes.
All the others the highest spent at least 4 years rather. But he spent well over 2 or 3 10 years, from 2007 to 2015.
That's 2 tenors.
2 tenors. Next to him was Senator Bukola Saraki, who spent 2015 to 2019. Competent in the area of management of your teammates, shouldn't that be considered?
Not necessarily. Politics, you see, it's not a technocrat work. The fact that you are competent does not mean that democratic system would not disfavor you. So it's not meritocracy. So if we even the best have the best intention, have capacity, have competence, but intrigue of politics can trump all those ideas of competence. So the question of argument about competence, first and foremost, for you to get elected to the National Assembly, I would say, if I may use the word, prima facie, show that you are a competent person and is somebody who has an authority from his own people elected to represent them. And what is the position of the Senate President or Speaker of the House of Representatives is that of first among equal. It means that any of the 109 senators and any of the 360 House of Rep member can be the presiding officer. So ultimately, and that is why you see different kind of arguments coming forward. Some who think zoning will not be in their favor will say, no, forget zoning. Let us talk about competence. Some of them who felt that zoning will be in their favor, they will not say they are not competent, but will say, okay, we need to, look at it from the zonal perspective. So as far as I'm concerned, there are so many options for my party, ruling party, in making consideration. And that will ultimately be a decision to be taken. Either you want to take a decision based on political expediency, or you want to take a decision based on some other consideration that you think is germane to cohesiveness of the country and to diversity of our existence. Argument can be canvassed, for instance, that for now you have the president of the elect Ajibola Tinubu from the southwest. You have the vice president from the northeast. That remains that there are 4 other zones, if you look at the 6 geopolitical zone, that can produce either the president of the Senate or the that of the speaker. And you see the 9th Senate. For instance, the president, Muhammadu Buhari, is from the northwest, the president of the Senate is from the northeast, and the vice president is from the southwest. The speaker, again, is also from the southwest. So it is not really a rigid game in terms of even zoning. It's not even a rigid game in terms of the argument of competence, but ultimately, the leadership of the party, as well as the members of the 10th Assembly, will have to look at so many variables. For instance, argument may be canvassed, which is the religious argument that, okay, the president is a Muslim, the vice president is a Muslim. Will it not be reasonable to have a Christian as the president of the Senate or the Speaker of the House of Representatives? And you cannot wish away such argument, particularly when you see the divisive nature that politics has taken in recent times in Nigeria. You may also look at, can you wish away the northwest part of the country, which for our party has produced the bulk of the vote by which we won the presidency? Will you decountenance their contribution, particularly having regard to the fact that if you look at the election, the way the gubernatorial election has gone in the northwest, our party, APC, lost in Kano, which is a bulwark of a support for our party. We also lost in Savara. Will you not be talking of having a Senate president in terms of political expediency to have somebody who is strong and who could be a rallying point for our party in that regard? So, and of course, you also consider South-South as also a possible emerging zone that you may also be looking at in terms of now emerging as a strong contender and support for our political party. You can see that my party did very well, pretty much than what we used to do in the South-South. Then you may look at possible gladiators from the South-South to be able to do so. So the argument about who becomes president of Senate or Speaker of the House is not just a thing that can be pigeonholed into saying competent, capacity, interest of people. There are a lot of political considerations that goes into taking such office.
Do they have to be mutually exclusive? This talk of competence, yes, you say that who is in the National Assembly that is not competent, yes. But we also know that, competence is in various fields. Dexterity at certain matters also varies. It comes with experience. It comes with what has been proven over time. The chances that people want to go for people that they have seen tested before and have succeeded at certain roles will be quite high. So do they have to be mutually exclusive? Can zoning and competence go hand in hand?
Of course, that's the argument I'm saying, that first we must not say that competence is just the only factor. And when you talk of competence, are you saying that in the Southwest, for instance, when you have senators like Senator Yayola Milekan, who has been in the House of Assembly, House of Rep, and a senator, is not competent, but you also discover that that's the same zone that the president of Nigeria will be? If the argument alone, I'm not countenancing the argument of competence and capacity, but I'm saying that will not be the only factor that will determine who takes it. Otherwise, we have also Senator Fatai Buhari from Oyo, who is, a third-time senator, who had also been in the House of Representatives. He had been in the executive arm. So for each of the zones of this country, you have competent people, you have capable people and you have people who can actually hold that office. So what I'm saying is that on top of competence and capacity argument is also political considerations and the question of balancing, which may be regional balancing, religious balancing, or political expediency.
How is your party handling the conversation right now? I mean, is the party interested? Because it would seem that the candidate, beg your pardon, the president-elect, who was the presidential candidate of a party, he said he's not looking in that direction. Whoever it is that, you know, the National Assembly throws up, he's been quoted as saying that. If that is the situation, is it the sole business of the party right now, or do you fear that the mistake that or the scenario we saw in the 8th Assembly could also pop up again in the 10th Assembly?
Of course, in the 8th Assembly, it's not as if the party did not take a position. The party actually had preference for Ahmed Lawal, but some other people in the party, felt that will not happen, and they decided to form alliance with the opposition party. At that time, the balance in terms of demography almost equal each other. But when you look at the demography now, we have 57 as at the last count, or 59 senators from the House of from the APC. You have 29, I think, from the PDP. I think about 7 from the Labour party. So in terms of demography, our party definitely will not close its eyes to who eventually will emerge as the president of the Senate. Yes, the president-elect may decide to insulate himself from whatever controversy, because whatever happened at the end of the day, he will have to work with any of those that will emerge. So it's not politically expedient for Ajibola Tinubu to go to town. I know Ashwaju is not somebody who run away from controversy when he was not the president-elect. At 8th Assembly, his preference was for Ahmed Lawal, notwithstanding that Senator Aki won. In 9th Assembly, his preference was also for Ahmed Lawal, and he campaigned for him. And as somebody who had gone on here to campaign against the sitting governor of another political party, but now he's the president-elect, is a statesman, so he has to act statesmanly. But some of us who are still in the political arena, of course, the party will have to sit down and look at where the position will be zoned. I will tell you that ultimately, because for now we have about 8 persons jostling for that position as at the last count, it will mean that if we throw it open, then it's an election that is won by simple majority. So I believe that our party will ultimately take a position on the zoning, possibly after Ramadan, or at least certainly before June, when the 10th Assembly will be convoked. And some of the parameters will be looked at. Yes, question of ranking is also one of the relevant factors in leadership of the National Assembly. Our standing rules talks about ranking as a veritable means of taking such decision. But of course, when you also look at ranking, you discover that in the 10th Assembly, you have quite a number of ranking legislators from all the zones of the country. And some of them even have experience of having been in the House of Representatives. Then aside the issue of ranking, you also have mentioned the issue of competence and capacity. But ultimately, our party also need to look towards not only now, but even the future of the party. We don't want, for instance, to have a party that is insensitive to the diversity and heterogeneity of the Nigerian society. Some of those factors will definitely influence the leaders of our party in ultimately taking a decision as to where the pendulum will swing. So
as we speak right now, the zoning decision has not been taken.
You know, Albert Einstein, when he was asked about a relation between politics and physics, he said politics is tougher than physics. Politics is not an exact science. And I think you can see even from here, I've mentioned a lot of variables that will operate on the mind of our people. Issue of competence, capacity, ranking, religion issue, ethnicity, political expediency, and of course, loyalty to the party. You don't want a situation whereby you have a leadership of an assembly that will be at loggerhead with the executive arm. And you see, as far as some of us are concerned, the 9th Assembly has shown what can be achieved in terms of legislative and constitutional advancement when there is harmonious relationship between the executive and legislative arm. So I think we want to build on that harmonious relationship, and that will influence who eventually have that kind of temperament to be able to lead the 10th Assembly towards that harmonious relationship between the executive and legislative arm of government.
What do we then make of these headlines? Senate presidency, APC looks to South-South, shocks for Northwest deputy.
Well, you know, politics, media, there are so many factors. Who is APC, for instance? We have different organs in APC. I saw the headline. I've not had the opportunity of reading what is the alter ego of APC. You know, when you have APC, I'm talking about my knowledge as a lawyer, like you talk about your television, our Channels Television. This Channels Television takes a decision. The question is, who are the alter ego of Channels Television? In our party, you have the National Working Committee, you have, the National Executive Council, you also have, the convention. Which arm of our party that can say authoritatively speaking for APC has made that particular statement? But of course, in political context, anybody may be able to push some story and get an headline to be able to do so. I'm not aware, for instance, that the NWC of our party has taken a position on the issue of zoning and where the zoning will be done. I'm not aware a NEC of our party, which is even superior organ, of the party, has also taken that decision. But of course, party leaders will be thinking, they will be making a lot of permutations, and will also, be looking at what are the various, options available to us to ensure that we have a seamless, relationship between the executive and legislative arm to be able to catalyze, the ideas and the program of the renewed hope of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. You know,
just one more. Can you confirm to us the statement, APC NWC, no Muslim should aspire for the position?
When, you see...
At least this is credited to the NWC.
When did the NWC have a meeting? I'm not aware there's a meeting of NWC that take that position. When you read that, you see, I'm very careful about
You're asking
this
us to take this with a pinch of salt.
Headline generation. You see, people craft headline. By the time you go to the nitty-gritty of the story, maybe a member of the NWC made that statement and it will be as if NWC. There must be a categorical statement by the NWC as a body, or the National Executive Council as a body before you take a position. I'm not fussy about whether it must be a Muslim, must be a Christian, must be zoned. I'm a party man. Wherever the party, zoned it. And some of the, gladiators at the 10th Assembly. And for instance, I heard Senator Barau Jubilee saying, ultimately, at a forum, I think yesterday or the first day, I think 2 or 3 of them who spoke there said that ultimately they will abide by whatever decision of the party. So I'm not aware that NWC has taken a position or the National Executive Council has taken a position. But of course, people are free to seek to influence decision ultimately by generating editorials, generating reportorial, and also trying to get the public sway one way or the other. It's part of the art of politicking. Okay. Persuasion by other means.
You know, you've talked about, I'm not going to mention the focus on competence and capacity, because you say that applies to every member of the Senate, because if you are in the Senate, then you have competence, you have capacity. But let's look at some of the people who are somewhat contending for this position. Kalu, Akpabio, Lawan. Lawan still has a chance, seeing that he's still a ranking senator.
And most ranking, it's most ranking.
And ranking is one of the criteria for getting to that position. The other thing is connectivity, the ability to connect amongst, the ability to connect amongst everybody here. So if you were asked to say, okay, which other criteria should be looked at? Leave the region and religion and the region of where the person's from to say, okay, this person or that person, without mentioning any names. Who is it that can lead this team to deliver policies? What kind of a person? Let's look at the person now. What kind of a person, no mention names, can lead that team to deliver programs and policies that will benefit the Nigerian?
A core party man who believes in the mandates of the party of Renewed Hope, which is the agenda of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. I think that's the way I put it.
A core party man.
Core party man.
Wow.
And when you say a core party man,
what if the opposition, like what happened under Senator Bukola Saraki, what happens if the opposition is able to woo some of your party members to form a coalition that will bring in somebody else?
It's only a failed general that get defeated by the same tactics twice and over again. I believe our party will have learned our lesson in 2015 and it will not happen again.
Okay, I think my colleague Bukola might have some questions. Buki.
Yes, thank you, Nyota. So, Senator Basiru, you've painstakingly talked a lot about political expediency. You've talked about the need for the party to be sensitive to diversity. So, in line with that, I've heard some National Assembly members canvass that the party should go the way of the 1999 model. And when we recall the 1999 model, the president, like today, was from the Southwest, vice president was from the Northeast, Senate president, Southeast, and the speaker was, I believe, also was from the Northwest. So would you be advocating that your party adopts the 1999 model for balance?
I would not call 1999, what happened in 1999 as a model. It was just, what happened based on political, realities of that time. The same political reality may not be, in existence, today. Of course, there will be much argument in support of a Senate president from the Southeast and, of course, South-South if you want to balance issue of diversity with issue of regional balancing as well as issue of religion. Those three factors may sway argument in favor of not only the Southeast but also South-South. And we also have quite competent and capable people from that region. So I wouldn't say when it comes to politics, there's no one size fits all answer to all circumstances.
But in the spirit of fairness, don't you think that the Senate presidency slot should go to the Southeast, especially with the agitation that because they've missed out on the presidency, they should naturally produce the Senate presidency slot? And in line with that, what do you think about the aspiration of Senator Orji Uzor-Kalu and Senator Osita Ozinasu?
You see, talking about fairness in context of politics, you also will have to face the reality that there was a democratic contest on February 25, 2023. In that democratic contest, the southeast part of the country, as a candidate from that place, Mr. Peter Obi from the Labour Party, and of course the overwhelming majority of the people in the southeast voted for Mr. Peter Obi. I think he grossed close to 87% on average of the vote from that region. So if eventually the Nigerian people decide to look the way of APC and Ajibola Tinubu from Southwest, you could not in any way be saying that the Southeast has been surcharged and has been unfairness to them because our Senate president is not soon to their place. Because the argument could also go that South-South, which is also in certain part of the country and also predominantly having a Christian population, have also contributed a large number of votes to the emergence of our party at the national election. Then as to the question that you asked about my distinguished colleagues, Senator Orji Uzor-Kalu is presently our chief whip, and I will tell you that he has done a very good job at being the chief whip of the 9th Assembly. Is somebody who is cool-headed, and of course is somebody that is a good listener. And I will also say that from my knowledge of him is a thoroughbred party man. Even in the initial contest for the presidency, I am aware that he initially pitched his tent with President Ahmed Lawal for the president's at the primary. But immediately, Ajibola Tinubu emerged. He devoted all his effort and ensuring that he worked for the party and the emergence of his candidate. Even though it was very difficult in the Southeast campaigning for our party because of the atmosphere of fear, intimidation, and of course, harassment of supporters of Ajibola Tinubu in that region. Senator Osita Isunazo, we are not together at the 9th Senate, but I think I've had cause to have relationship with him when he was a party official in the party. He's also quite a gentleman, but I will say that because you take decisions based on close relationship. So if I'm an employer, I would rather look at who have I worked with before, who have I shared experience at the same chamber. So I will say that I've had a very robust experience and the relationship with Senator Ajibola Kalu. But that is not to say that that is my preference. I'm open to whoever a party decides, and of course, like every other party man, will support whoever the party decide to support for the election.
I'm wondering if you're really open, or you'd rather not disclose who you're choosing to support, because I know that you've mentioned two names prior to this time. You mentioned Senator Fatai Buhari, you also mentioned Senator Olamilekan, and you talked about how Senator Olamilekan is also a ranking senator and deserving of the seat. So is that where you would rather align with? And are you uncannily giving us an insight into where the party may head towards in deciding the Senate presidency slots? Because in the 8th Assembly, or rather the 9th Assembly, the party did not particularly go the way of, zoning, if we consider the emergence of the Speaker of the 9th Assembly.
Bukola, I'm not always somebody who is running away from controversy. If I'm strong about my opinion, I would definitely, say it. But I'm saying that it is too early in the day, to take a definitive position as to preference for any particular, candidate. For now, we are still at the period of searching, and we also have to, cast our net, very wide, and ensure that all variables in the political decision is made available, not only to the public, but to our leader. The argument why I mentioned Senator Fatai Buhari and, of course, Senator Olamilekan is because of the argument that we are doing. They call it, in law, we call it assuming arguendo, assuming without conceding that issue of competence is the overriding thing. I said that we have also competent and capable senators from the Southwest, but of course it will sound very untoward for the president of Nigeria, Ajibola Tinubu, president-elect, to come from the Southwest, and for us to also pick the president of the Senate from the Southwest, if we want to have respect for the diversity and heterogeneity of the Nigerian society. So the fact I mentioned them is to buttress my point that competence and capacity is not just the only factor. Some other factors may trump competence and capacity, while not also derogating from the fact that in leadership of the 10th Assembly, we need a man or a woman, as the case may be, of character, competence, capacity, but able to be a bridge builder and ensure that diversity of our country is respected in that regard.
Of these names, Senator Basiru, who do you think would secure the highest number of votes if the members of the National Assembly, the Senate now, were to go to the polls today?
I don't know. I'm not a member of the... I'm not going to the 10th Assembly. I lost my election, so I'm only going back to my law practice and do some other things. So I will not know the faces, because the number of persons that returned to the 10th Assembly from 9th Assembly, I don't think we're up to 30. So I wouldn't be able to know what will be the thinking of the majority. So I don't have power of clairvoyance. I'm still learning to be able to have a discerning mind, to be able to know what people are thinking. But ultimately, I know majority of our party members in the APC will respect ultimately whatever decision the party leadership takes in ensuring that we have a leadership not only for the 10th Assembly, but a leadership that really work and have an assembly that work for Nigerian people.
Well, I know that you worked with Senator Ali Ndume, you worked with Senator Ajibola Kalu, and quite a number of others in the race. So if you're shying away from that question, I understand. But the wide consultation that is ongoing, does it perhaps have anything to do with the variety in the opposition that is headed into the 10th Assembly? And do you think that the numbers of the opposition would have a lot to do, with who emerges the Senate President and other key leadership positions in the National Assembly for the 10th Assembly?
I think that would depend on how our party decide to get our acts together and have cohesion ultimately in being able to get what will want to be leadership. As far as I'm concerned, it will be in the best interest of our party to zone the offices so that we can narrow, the number of contestants, because when you have 8 persons from a single political party contesting, it creates a problem for us in having a cohesive force going into the election. So ultimately, I see a situation whereby our party will ultimately take decision as to the zone that those offices will go to. Then in that regard, we'll be ready to have a contest with anybody in the opposition group that want to contest either for Senate position and of course speakership position. I'm aware that in the House of Rep, a group of opposition parliamentarians have started grouping themselves and saying that they want the speakership to come from their position. Presently, if party position is told, we have the majority for the emergence of speakership and of course of the presidency of the Senate.
Relating to that question is this one. There's a lot of talk from members of this 10th Assembly, reps-elect and senators-elect, about emotional blackmail and bickering. And considering the number of new members who have been elected for this 10th Assembly, how fragile is the independence of the 10th Assembly after the elections?
I don't see anything about being fragile about the 9th Assembly. We have 109 senators.
10th Assembly now.
At the last count, I think 57 or 59 members of the APC. I think that is sufficient majority. Most of the businesses at the National Assembly are carried by simple majority, except in the context of amendment of Constitution, whereby you require 2/3 in certain cases and 4/5 in certain cases. So in terms of ordinary business of the National Assembly, I think the ruling party, the APC, has sufficient number both in the Senate and the House of Representatives to be able to have their way in almost virtually all issues of to be passed at the Assembly.
Just before I hand it over to Abuja now, how much weight should we attach to the position of the president-elect that he would have no influence whatsoever on who emerges Senate president and, of course, other key leadership positions in the National Assembly? Should we take it at face value, or should we be scrutinizing that a bit more?
I think, Bukola, I don't know whether somebody has sent you to send me away from our party. You are asking me to second-guess my leader, my mentor and benefactor on the national television. Ajibola Tinubu is not somebody who will shy away from controversy if he needs to get into that controversy. So if he has said that, I think every Nigerian should believe he has said that. But that does not mean that our party, as a party, will not be interested in who eventually will emerge as at the leadership of the 10th Assembly.
Okay, so let me come in here, because there's also now, I think that's trailing very much off the back of what my colleague was asking, especially in the House of Representatives, meetings amongst members of the opposition parties, that perhaps they could produce a leader for for that coveted seat of speaker. Do you think it's a scenario that is workable?
You see, in politics, you cannot write off any permutation. You cannot write off any force. But it's good that they have shown their hands early enough, and I think that will make our party also to sit tight and they walk along the way of ensuring that we have leadership of the House of Representatives in our party. And of course, when you look at many of the gladiators that are there, with respect to many of them, it's like a contest whereby 7 or 8 people are leading a group of people, and all the 7 also is looking for the same thing. At the end of the day, when the chips are down, the 7 people will walk their own way with the respective people that they have in their support.
That's the plan of your party, or that's
it's not a plan of party. I'm just looking at a scenario whereby you have almost about 7 people who want to be speaker, now say they want to form a coalition. At the end of the day, would they agree as to one of them that will hold that position? If they can agree, it's a possibility, but the possibility of them agreeing So to the extent that they are driven by the same, ambition, will also make, a coalition, that alliance to fall, flat, even before we get to the contest.
But it's a possibility you're not dismissing.
You cannot, as a politician, dismiss any permutation. If you do so at the risk of failing in your own endeavor. So we will not dismiss them. We are taking them, very serious, and I think my leaders are also taking them serious. But we believe that with the majority that we have, we should provide leadership for both the House of Representatives and the Senate in the 10th Assembly. So it's a challenge, and of course we'll watch closely, and we will be able to ensure that all that is necessary in terms of taking care of, interest of the members of our party along zonal and along religious lines and along different diversity represented by Nigeria is taken care in that regard. But we are not writing off anybody in that regard, and that's why you see people coming up with different arguments, and can see my brother Wole Oke punching very hard on the issue of zoning, as if at some point in his own political career he has also on capacity, as if at some point in his own political career he has also not benefited from zoning of positions even at the National Assembly.
Well, I am just a little curious. What would you say will be illegal while all of these candidates are going about looking for these different positions, or let's say aspirants looking for these different positions? What will be illegal for them to do in pursuit of the ambition? Because the kinds of stories that we hear horse trading, we hear alliances, etc. But when you now start to hear stories of bribes, I'm looking for a better word, but
gratification.
Yes, dollar rain, for instance. These are the kinds of things that worry Nigerians in terms of what exactly is allowed, what should be frowned upon in leaders seeking the seats that they seek.
Of course, it is not only unethical. It is disturbing if the leadership of an exalted body like the Senate and House of Rep has to be bought. It portends danger for robustness of our democracy. But when it comes to horse trading and lobbying, of course, it could be that, okay, you want my support for Senate President. Okay, I'm interested in a particular committee. I'm interested in a particular membership of a certain body, ECOWAS or something like that. That's because you're also looking for a position. I think that is within the area that I think is acceptable. But when it comes to actual purchase, if I may use that word, you may not want to use of people's mandate. I think that is dangerous for democracy, and that is why one of the areas that is the fourth line of even our democratic process, notwithstanding even the demonetization and the squeezing of naira, from circulation, even the last general election is still fraught with incidents of vote buying, which means that terrorists having large amount of money can even aspire to be positioned and get elected into that position. So both at the level of general election and at the level of electoral college like the National Assembly, we need to address issue of vote buying and issue of getting people to get to position by such kind of a motivation.
When we come back from this break, I'll be asking you if there's anything that we can do to really monitor. Do you think that, this is something that there is sufficient political will to monitor? We understood that yesterday the EFCC, ICPC and co say they had no comments on whether or not they were monitoring what was happening there. But I would also be asking if it's somewhere you think that those bodies should be monitoring even as this sort of conversations are ongoing. In just a moment, please stay with us. Dr. Ajibola Basiru, who is a senator representing Osun Central Senatorial District, also of the APC, and the spokesperson of the Senate, is still with us here in our studios, and we're talking about the race for the presidency of the Senate as a 10th Senate of the National Assembly of Nigeria. Well, so Senator, just before we went on break, we're talking about monitoring what exactly we count as horse trading and what exactly will count as, I don't want to say vote buying, I think you use another word, is it monetization?
Gratification.
Gratification and purchase of the highly exalted seat of either President of the Senate or Speaker of the House of Representatives. So do you think that members of, not just members now, but the institutions of the ICPC, EFCC, even the police, do you think that this is a race that they too should be interested in?
All right, they should be interested because it borders on breach of criminal law of the country, and by their mandate they should. But if an inquiry is made to them and they say that they are not commenting, that would not mean that they are not doing what they're supposed to do. But you see, the problem we usually have in Nigeria is that you want to chase somebody and you already announce that you are chasing the person. The person will already be on alert. I remember on the day of my election, we alerted the police that there were incidents of people trying to snatch ballot box at Ward 9 in Osogbo local government. And when the police were coming, they were already blowing siren. So of course the culprits, they disappear. I mean, so you see, I don't think even if EFCC and ICPC are working, they don't need to put it in the media they are working. I think the result of their work that should speak for them. And that's why I was surprised when DSS came up with a press statement and said some people are organizing for interim government. One would expect is for those people to be arrested. Then it is the product of their work that will now speak whether there is really a genuine plot or otherwise, and those who are behind those things. So the law enforcement agents should rather work and ensure that they get results rather than announcing that they are working.
Maybe it's also a deterrence. You don't think so?
I wouldn't think so. But I think it speaks to the content and character of each and every member of the National Assembly to ensure that that office is respected and ensuring that people get freely elected to that particular position.
You know, talking about respecting the office, let's look at what the Constitution says about that office, the Senate, and how it should bring in its leaders, right? Section 50 talks about there shall be a president and a deputy president of the Senate, and just like there will be a speaker and a deputy speaker of the House, and they will be elected from amongst themselves. Okay? Section 60 says, subject to the provision of the Constitution, the Senate or the House of Representatives shall have power to regulate its own procedure, including the procedure for summoning and recess of the House. Okay? You're a lawyer, so you would help us walk this through. How does this tie into what the party says they should do, as in this is the person the party prefers, as against what the Constitution says about allowing them to choose amongst themselves? But the Constitution didn't say anything about party, majority or minority. They will choose amongst themselves, first amongst equals. So please, connect the dots.
The party will not say that they should not elect among themselves. But we are in a party system. I don't know. Let me go back to what is even a political party. At least some of us who study government in the secondary school. So that day I made this analogy. Somebody felt offended that I was saying that he did not study. I did not say he did not study government, but I just like, you know, I grew up in a local environment. I like to make analogy. What is a political party? A political party, government O level, is a group of people coming together, having ideas, program and policy that they want to implement it, and seeking power to be able to do so. That's what political party is. Today in Nigeria, we've made proposition for independent candidacy, but today we are running political party system. So a political party that has taken over power at the executive level, that also has majority in the National Assembly, in order to realize its policies, program and activities, must necessarily be interested in the leadership of the National Assembly. And that is why the role of the political party in emergence of leadership is. And that's what we call party whip. Even in our standing order, you see that provision of Section 60 is now translated to reality by what we call the standing order of the Senate, and the standing order of the House of Rep. In the standing order, there's what the position of whip is there. What position whip is that when a decision is to be taken, you are expected to toe party line. And that's why there are also caucuses. There is the state caucus, there is the party caucus within the state, the regional caucus, and the national caucus of every political party. So it's at that level that we'll be able to aggregate idea and opinion and to be able to do so. So that does not negate the position of the party, of the constitution. The constitution ultimately will be respected because there will be a ballot. And the ballot will ensure that majority arise. But the party
there'll be a ballot of the general house.
General house. Of the general house. But before that time, the party would have been able to aggregate the views of the member and say, okay, party A, this is where we are going. Party B, this is where we are going. So if you are a party man and nobody gets to that office as an event candidate, you have to also, respect, your party. And that's why I have to go back to government O level. You want to, for instance, we are now going to continue in government beyond May 29.
But you see,
and we need a legislative arm that is able to realize the manifesto of our president-elect.
The argument.
So you need a leadership that's also, in tandem with that aspiration and program and policies.
The argument here would be that when you finish the contest, you've come into the Senate. It is the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Yes.
It is not the Senate of a party.
Yes.
It is not the Senate of... It's just that individuals, you're representing Osun, it's a constituency in Osun State, just like others are representing certain constituencies in different states. So it's the Senate of the Federal Republic. And you're allowed to vote amongst yourself to pick a leader. So when the people decide to vote, for instance, let's just say, for want of a better example, you're returning. And let's say you're from a different party. Let's say MO party. If there's no MO party in our nation, but you're MO party and you're returning, and everybody feels that you are the most competent in terms of connecting with the 109 of us, or the 108 of us. You are the most competent in terms of moving all of us to serving our constituencies. You are the most competent, but the majority members are in a certain party. They say A2 party.
And they don't have anybody that is also competent.
And they may have, but everybody feels like this one is more competent. Can that person fly?
If they feel, you see, everywhere in the world, even where we get this our democracy from, it's not from here. Even in the United States of America, the party that has majority in the Congress will produce the leadership at the Congress.
Will, not must.
Yes, will, of course. It's not a must. It's not the must, but will. In the where the parliamentary system is even the greater expression of it. The party that has the majority in the parliament will produce even the prime minister. Because there's a fusion of the executive and legislative arm. So you cannot divorce party politics and partisanship from democratic governance. That is the reality. So it is easier, maybe because you can talk this way because you are not a member of a political party. I'm a member of a political party. My party is APC. My party, by the will of the Nigerian people, we have emerged as the new government of Nigeria. We have programs we want to implement. We don't want an opposition parliament that will be throwing darts into the progress of the work we have done. And of course, you cannot remove partisanship from even the work of the National Assembly. And that's why when I'm being introduced by Mokwe, he said that APC will still, yes, I'm a senator representative of Central, but APC will still be my political party. So within the National Assembly, we still have the APC caucus, we have the PDP caucus, then of course they will have their Labour Party, caucus. But at the end of the day, when it comes to taking decision for the benefit of the country, we'll aggregate our view and take decision in that regard. But when it comes to leadership, you cannot play politics of dispassionate consideration when it comes to such sensitive office as the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Reps.
Let's step out of that space and look at the country in general. How would you describe the conduct of the last election?
The conduct of the last election is largely an improvement on the previous election in many respects. And I think the fact that technology is recognized in certain measures in the Electoral Act help the credibility of that election. And yes, and when I say this, I say it with all sense of responsibility. I contested, and I did not win. So the question of maybe somebody is a bitter loser is not there. I know there are some issues about suppression of votes, about violence in my constituency, but that is a problem that you may not be able to establish by way of evidence in terms of the local. But when it comes to the actual, conduct, the use of the beavers, ensure that genuine voters voted at the election. Then, of course, the results, were collected both manually and in terms of transfer of the result as recommended under Section 60 of Electoral Act. And when you also see the kind of figures that come out from states with very large figure before, I won't mention them, it's got that something dramatic has actually happened in the contest here. So at times when I see a lot of people saying the election was rigged, was manipulated, I don't look at it. So do you think that if election is responsibility of rigging an election, and I say it's anybody can say so, that Ajibola Tinubu will contest as a president and he will lose election in Lagos State if he has a way that he can manipulate the election? I'm not saying he will manipulate it by himself, but he has followers and supporters who will feel as a matter of ego they want to do so. Do you think the president, Muhammadu Buhari, his candidate will not win in Katsina State, will not win in Katsina State and in Kaduna State, and of course in Kano State? So the election of 2023 is largely an improvement on the previous election and is reflective of the improvement we have made by passage of the 2022 Electoral Act. And going forward, I believe that we'll continue to improve in that regard.
But there are certain aspects that many would have thought would be brought in. You mentioned technology. It was as though we want to bring in technology, but let's just take it piecemeal. One would have thought that it would be a holistic insertion of technology into the electoral process.
It could not be. If you will recollect, there was this hot debate at the National Assembly on whether results should be transmitted or transferred. I don't know whether you could recollect that time. I think I had the occasion of addressing that, in some of your program here, when even the Senate was scandalized by members of opposition, that's majority in the Senate, that we didn't want progress in Nigeria, we didn't want that. We had concerns about security of the network. We had concern about adequate coverage of the network. And so the initial formulation in Section 60 of the Electoral Act was that INEC should deploy to transmit results where there is adequate data coverage and when NCC so certify as to that regard. Of course, there were a lot of controversies in town, a lot of opinion writers, so the provision had to be amended. So what was eventually agreed is what is in Section 60, subsection 4 now. And what is in Section 60 is that after election might have been concluded, results must be announced, recorded on the form EC8, a physical form manually, then the copy of the results and number of accreditation will be transferred in a manner that may be specified by INEC. So the use of the word transmission was deliberately removed from Section 60 of the Electoral Act. Then going to Section 64, subsection 6, when there is a dispute as to at the level of collation, INEC is allowed to use results transferred from the polling unit to be able to resolve that controversy. So if there's no controversy, and the room for controversy is actually limited because every political party is expected to have agents at the polling units, and is expected to have agents at the collation center. And when you look at cases, Nigerian cases, and in terms of election is done, concluded, result of election is computed at the polling unit level. What is done at the ward collation, local government collation, state collation are mere arithmetical computation. So every party should be able to have a copy of the form EC8A at the polling unit level, from which they can even do their own tabulation of results, which they will take to the next level of collation center. So some of the arguments about results not being on IRF, about a particular website not doing results, are just, for me, they are not arguments that are within the confine of Section 60 of Electoral Act. Electoral Act made it clear, result of election must be concluded, must be written and published at the polling unit level. So from the aggregation of that polling unit level, you know whether you have won or whether you have lost the election. You don't have to go to IRF or any website to be able to say that you won there or you do not win there. And that address problem of data security, which we are still battling in Nigeria.
But again, that portion of the lecture where you talked about the results, if there is no controversy, we saw that the National Coalition Center, some parties walked out. They had issues. And the Electoral Act says INEC can review 7 days after. INEC hasn't come out to say...
No, this is where you want to raise a review. Let me, the way election works for presidential election, you have election in over 170,000 polling units. You go to the ward. From the ward, there will be collation at the ward. At the local government, there will be collation. Then what at the state level, there will be collation. What is done at the National Coalition Center is announcement of what has been collated at the state level. So if you have not raised your issues about collation at the ward level, you have not raised it at the local government level, you have not raised it at the state level, then at the national level, where what you are doing is just arithmetic computation of what comes from the 30 states and the 36 states and the FCT, then you are not even working in line with what is provided in section 64 of the Electoral Act. And that is why, for instance, when the old issues were being raised, as at that time, all political parties, and I believe political parties who are serious about election will have their situation room. They would have known the result of that election based on computation of what their agents and would have told them emerged from the polling unit.
Well, I know that largely these issues are now before an election petition tribunal, but I don't know whether as a politician you feel a bit scandalized now that eventually when the IRF eventually came up, the fact that in some polling units results were altered, or they seemed like they were altered because we saw generous use of TPEX on certain result sheets, people alleging that, the results have been changed at my polling unit. The results that have been put on the IRF platform were not what was taken at was not a true reflection of what happened in my polling unit. Do you, as a politician, are you concerned
I've not had cause. Let me tell you, in my own election, I look at the IRF as at a week after the election, close to about 340 polling unit results had not been uploaded. But the truth is that I must be honest with myself. I have copies of the Form EC8A from all the polling units, 1,332 polling units in my constituency. And of course, I can arithmetically compute it and see whether it tallies with what happened at the ward and local government level. There's a difference between political sensationalization and the reality. The matter is before the court. If anybody feels that the results that has been given at the polling unit does not tally with what has been announced as the result, let them go to the tribunal. But let them not come.
No, what I'm saying is, I agree that, that's you as a politician. For many Nigerians who do not have polling unit agents, who, just took things in their own hands, took pictures of the results as, they normally would do, and then, we're told that, for transparency's sake, you'll be able to double check that on the IRF, this is what will be there. Are you a bit scandalized?
I'm not scandalized. I don't even believe such happened. Unless I see evidence. I'm a legal practitioner. I believe in real evidence. There's a difference between fiction and... So the question is that the figures, you see, at the level of collation, at the ward level, if there are issues about ballot accounting, there's what we call ballot accounting. On top of the Form EC8A, they will write number of ballot paper issued, number of ballot paper used, number of spoiled ballot paper. At times, there are arithmetical computation, which does not affect the actual result of the election. Unless people come out and say that the vote for a party, which is 50, is reduced to 45, then it is then you are talking about manipulation of elections.
Dr. Basiru, I want to thank you so much for coming. But before we let you go, real quick, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the 9th Assembly?
10.
10 over 10?
Yes.
Wow. Dr. Basiru is the senator representing Osun Central Senatorial District, and he's a lawyer and spokesperson of the 9th Assembly. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, it's my joy being here.
Thank you. Samara will be back in a moment. Just stay with us.